Hey there, Bear Club! At the Mama Bear Initiative, we explore how to protect ourselves so we can protect our cubs, the people who depend on us. Join us and get the confidence you need to stay safe, make good choices, and protect yourself and those you care about. Let's go!
Hello and welcome back to the Mama Bear Initiative podcast. I'm Stephanie Dunham.
I'm Evelyn Mason.
I'm Rochelle Knapp.
We'd like to thank you for joining us today on this podcast episode. We are so excited because we have our first interview.
Yay! Woo-hoo! I'm excited.
Yeah. We've been doing this for a few months now.
Yeah.
This is the first time we've interviewed someone. So the gentleman that we interviewed is named Clive Stewart. He was born and raised and still lives in South Africa. I met him through the Shisenkan International Kabuto Federation. After I joined, I started attending these online classes with my teacher who happens to live in Japan. Mm-hmm. And Clive was one of the students in the class. And I started interacting with him and got to know some of his story. And when we were working out how to do this podcast and whatnot, I thought it would be interesting to interview Clive, given his experiences.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So we have a 3-part interview. So we're going to do this first part is going to be basically his biography, where he says lots of interesting and useful things.
Yes.
I should warn you, if you're listening to this, that there are some graphic descriptions of violence, injuries, and killing that Clive talks about. It's all relevant, and therefore we're leaving it in.
Yeah.
To his story and what makes him basically an expert in dealing with violence.
Yeah. I mean, he lives in a kill-or-be-killed society with a really high murder rate. And so, fair warning.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I met a lot of people over my 50-some years, and there's some people who talk about fighting in their youth and whatnot, but Clive has been a soldier.
Yeah.
He's been a bodyguard. He's been a doorman. He's been bouncer, all sorts of things, and dealing with basically violent criminals for a good portion of his life.
Yeah,
right?
He even had to defend his own home, on at least 2 occasions, right? Or 3?
I think he said 3.
Wow.
Yeah.
And, one of them, there again, fair warning, at least one of them resulted in, how shall we put this?
Resulted in the deaths of the intruders.
Yeah. So he was able to overcome them and use his training.
Yeah, he basically used his training to kill the intruders. Yeah.
And it's really encouraging for us as martial artists in the same art that he's in to know that, our art is useful as well as ornamental. It's something
ornamental.
A little less ornamental.
My mom used to say, be useful as well as ornamental. Try to get me to do some work. But yeah, seriously, our art has been poo-pooed. It has been looked down on. But here comes Clive, who has really put it to the test and has proven that, the skills that he developed over his many years in training are useful.
Right, which is encouraging, because I teach martial arts, and I sometimes worry about, what if one of my students encounters violence? Am I teaching them the right stuff?
Yeah. Will this be useful to them?
Right.
It's hard to... Sorry.
Okay. And I feel encouraged by what Clive had to say about how Kabuto has helped him.
Yeah.
And I've thought about this over the years of, not that I ever thought I was wasting my time learning, but knowing that it had been made fun of before, or mocked before, it does validate this idea that if we need it, it's there. Mm-hmm. The skill is in our bodies. In our society, we don't live in a lawless situation, but you never know, which is which is our whole theme. We never know what could happen. And so knowing that you have the skills you need to protect yourself and it validates what you're doing really helps.
Yeah, and he also says some pretty practical things about how to pay attention to your environment, how to know when someone's about to attack. Like, we think of it in one way, but he makes it seem more practical.
Yeah, I mean, given that he's actually experienced it. So it's not in theory. It's, this is what happened. This is what didn't work. He'll talk about what doesn't work, but he'll also talk about what does work. And that's why we just really wanted to make sure that we gave you all as much as we could of what he had to say. It's so good. And you'll want to go back and re-listen because it's just packed with information.
Yeah, I agree. I'm very thankful for Clive taking the time to talk with us and to help us to understand some things that we kind of take for granted.
Right.
Yeah.
Or we're kind of naive about, I think.
Yeah. We just don't know. I mean, we don't live in the same situation he does.
Right.
But so much of what he has to say will help us to become more competent, to undergird any confidence we might have.
Yeah. And, another thing that I find extremely helpful was he understands the criminal mindset because he's dealt with it so often.
That's true. Yeah. And for so many years.
I feel like when I was listening to him talk, there was just so many things he said that I wasn't even aware was a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the most criminal activity I've been exposed to is on television.
Right. We don't even see it that much in real life.
Right. We experience it by watching, essentially.
Yeah. So, when he's talking about what criminals are like and, what people do in situations, it just felt so much better. Well, let me rephrase that. I feel like I had a much better understanding of what to watch for, what to look for, and what to expect.
Right.
Yeah. And from somebody who has the credentials.
Right.
He's not just, speaking whatever. It's real. It's true.
It's not theoretical.
Yeah.
He said he's been stabbed, shot, and he's been in real physical violent fights. I mean, of course, the defending your home and life thing is probably up there in terms of how much he had to do to deal with it. But if it was ongoing for a good portion of his life, he definitely has those experiences and the credentials, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And even if you're not a martial artist or have no interest in being a martial artist, there's still a lot you can learn from someone who's been dealing with actual violence on a regular basis. And there's like a level of awareness that we've talked about in our podcast before that's important because we just never know. Like I said, we just no idea what could happen where. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a violent situation. It could just be someone yelling at you out of turn or getting in your face about something. It doesn't have to turn to violence. It could just be something completely out of nowhere that you have no idea what to do. And if you're in the right mindset, you won't panic, hopefully. You'll be able to manage your emotions and deal with the situation in a calmer way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the main thing that he had to say was to be calm, be practical, and to really think through like how you're going to approach paying attention and that sort of thing. I think it was, I don't know. I just feel different having listened to what he had to say.
Yeah, definitely.
And as mama bears, of course, we want to make sure that we are equipped. So he gives us a lot that we could add to our toolkits.
That's right. So the episode, like I said, is 3 parts. I apologize for the audio quality of the actual interview, but we were doing it over the internet, so we couldn't use our usual microphones to record. And Clive's was using his computer microphone, I guess, and it was a little bit echoey. I've done what I could to clean it up, did my best, but I hope that you enjoy what he has to say and you learn from it.
Yeah.
So let's get started with the interview. All right, now let's do the...
Yes, I started doing this martial arts in 1991, but I started doing martial arts, well, I don't know, combat sport. Before that, I started judo at the age 9, and at age 5, before that, I did Zulu stick fighting and things like that with my father.
Wow.
So now I'm 5, so 50 years.
Wow, that's amazing. He's currently working as a computer scientist in cybersecurity. Um, and you live with your wife in South Africa in the mountains.
Yeah, I live in an area called near the Drakensberg Mountains. It's a mountain range that stretches between for about 1,500 kilometers. And
Wow.
the area where I live in is quite high up. It's an altitude of about 2.5 kilometers up above sea level.
Oh,
So
okay.
very different
Yeah.
to the climate of the rest of South Africa, which is pretty similar to the rest of the place where I live is pretty similar to, say, Florida would be about the closest to it.
Okay. Yeah.
Pretty
So,
tropical.
Clive, why don't you share some of your history with us that's relevant to the sorts of questions we're going to talk about today? So, why don't you catch us up?
So when I was young, after I finished school, there was compulsory military service in South Africa under apartheid, and all white males had to do compulsory military service or go to jail for 15 to 20 years. Um,
Mhm.
I was in the Angolan War for many years. Exactly what did there or whatever, it's not something I really want to talk about. But
Right.
at the end of that many years of doing that, most of the people who went to the army with me
Mm-hmm.
got killed over a 4.5 year period. 27 out of 30 people um, were involved in a long, protracted war against the Russian and Cuban army. Uh,
Mm.
we're outnumbered about 10 to 1, but we absolutely defeated them.
Mm-hmm.
And the military force I belonged in would sometimes go out 3 people for up to 3 months in the bush, or what we call the bush, I don't know how you would term it, and live off the
Probably not.
land. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you live off the land, live with among the animals, whatever, move around at night, and basically hunt Russians
Oh, wow.
and
Okay.
kill them when you found them.
Mm-hmm.
So you wouldn't get any food, you wouldn't bath and wash, you weren't allowed to talk. You didn't talk, you only used sign language if you spoke at all, and you would live out for 3 months at a time. You would leave base, travel up to 1,000, 2,000 kilometers away, and then come back. I did that for many years. Then, after returning back to South Africa in 1990, I was ordered to serve in the townships, what we call townships. So they areas of poverty that, like, so in America, when you think of a downtrodden poor areas, nothing on the township because that's would be a haven. These places have got like 1 million people in them, and there's not one of them has sewage, water, lights, regular
Wow.
food. It's a level of true poverty where
Wow.
people have to choose between, do they have enough money to travel to work or do they have enough money for lunch, etc., etc. So every day is a choice between what don't you have.
Right.
And obviously, at the end of apartheid, there was a lot of protests and different things going on. And I was ordered to shoot an 80-year-old woman who was protesting her political rights, and I refused. So they threw me in jail and gave me a 15-year jail sentence for refusing to murder. So
Oh, wow.
the apartheid army, I mean, it's pretty close in some ways to Nazi German. Uh, but compared to our Russian foes, we were actually good guys, which was incredible. And the things I saw that the Russians that did to their own allies made,
Mhm.
uh, yeah, I won't go into details, but Needless
Yeah.
to say, the local population in Angola actually sided with the apartheid army. That's how bad their allies were. So their allies were more evil than we were, so to speak. And
Okay.
in any case, so there are sometimes white people in South Africa who say apartheid wasn't bad, but I was there serving in that army, and we never had a choice, but it was not good. So
Mhm.
I was put in jail for a 15-year jail sentence, but then apartheid collapsed and I was released, but I had a criminal sentence for refusing to shoot an 80-year-old woman. So
Mm.
I eventually got that expunged by Nelson Mandela, and Bishop Tutu introduced me to Nelson Mandela, and
Mhm.
um, I got my criminal record for refusing to murder someone removed. Okay, but up
That's
until
good.
that time, I could not legally work. I wasn't allowed to study at university, even though I'd done exceptionally well at school. At school, came first in every subject that I did at school. Okay,
Mhm.
especially maths and science. But I wasn't allowed to study. I wasn't allowed to work. I wasn't allowed anything. So I had no way of surviving. So I started working in security as a doorman.
Yeah.
Answer the Durban dock districts and working in townships and shebeens. A shebeen is basically what's known as an illegal tavern or drinking
Mhm.
hall. And that was the only places I could find work or could work up until later when I had my criminal sentence removed, which was
Okay.
removed and expunged. So that's how I ended up working in security work. And later from there, I went into working around the world in different places, including Thailand, and working on different ships and things like that, as whatever the job was, including bodyguarding, working elsewhere in Africa, in different war zones, working with the police, doing bounty hunting or whatever was required to get.
Mhm.
Except it's not, I use the term bounty in South Africa, there's no equivalent of bounty because you don't have a system like that, but it's where you capture criminals or get criminals who are wanted by the police.
Okay.
The problem with that is that the criminals you're dealing with, a lot of these are war criminals from the rest of Africa as well. And they're raised as child soldiers from the age of 6 or 7, they've already been committing murder.
Right.
So when you deal with them, you're dealing with groups of 15, 20 people. They're all going to be armed with AK-47s, etc. And in the line of the work I did, I've been stabbed, I've been shot, and other such things, including in the arm. So, and then outside of that, my house has been invaded 3 times by criminals. They've broken the
Wow.
house and I woke up with a man standing over my bed with a big knife, and he stabbed me right through my shoulder, my scalp.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So I killed him and
Mhm.
ran through screaming. There was another one trying to rape my mother, so I killed him too, using
Wow.
the Commodore martial arts I'd learned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up getting my different experiences in combat, gun, whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
It was through that life. Then after I'd been doing that about 14 years, I started studying correspondence and gradually built up my education to where now I'm in possession of 3 master's degrees, all in science.
Yeah.
So, and now I work as a computer scientist, and I don't no longer work in the security world because I hated it with a passion. I never, ever enjoyed doing that work, but I had no choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how I gained my experience in violence. And of course, living in a country with the highest murder rates in the world of about 130 people a day
Yeah.
are murdered in
Terrible.
South Africa. The
Yeah.
area I live in has got a population, say, 1/10 the size of New York, and has more murders in 1 month than New York has experienced in 10 years.
Wow.
Mm.
So the violence is different. And
Yeah.
what I found in those experiences was when I was younger, I'd done judo, karate, boxing, okay,
Mhm.
especially judo. And I did early on I trained in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and also did wrestling. When I was stuck inside the military prison, so the South African military prison is worse than a normal prison. Because there are men inside there who had been inside that prison for 30 years. And I had to share a cell with a serial killer. And
Ugh.
Oh, wow.
Oh wow.
like that.
Yeah, it's
That must have been
intense.
scary.
Not
So
really,
that must
because
have,
it wasn't his profile. Do you understand?
Oh.
So he's not, if you're not, his profile was woman, murdering woman. So
Mm.
was absolutely fine, you know. Just
Okay.
the disturbing thing was listening to him talk
Okay.
because you didn't want to hear the things he spoke about because all he could think
Right.
and dream of was killing people. That's all
Ugh.
went through his head, and he fantasized about it from the time he woke up, and then when he went to sleep, he still spoke about it in his sleep.
Oh wow.
So, and I found inside the military prison while I was there that judo was an absolute waste of time. So, of course, some judo people, what's this guy talking about? I was very good at judo, by the way. I went to Japan, I competed, I fought the Japanese judo champion, I fought the Olympic judo champion, and won.
Mhm.
Okay, but because of apartheid, we couldn't compete in the Olympics. But in judo sport, I was good enough to compete with anybody in my weight group in the world. But once I got into army prison, that was useless. It was a totally ineffective system. The boxing I'd done was also ineffective because as soon as you get into fights, it's 2-on-1, 3-on-1, and these people deliberately pick on you, and then you turn around, and while you're busy stuck in your sport mentality, next minute you're on the floor, they standing over you. That's when I realized
Right.
they were just being friendly. Because if they weren't being friendly, you'd be dead. That's simple.
That's
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I quickly became accustomed to criminal mindset, which is they don't think. So there's no concept of one-on-one violence. There's no concept of
Mm.
punch, kick. It's 3-on-1, 2-on-1, and there's always a weapon. That's just guaranteed. So,
Wow.
like when I done boxing, you learn to take strikes on the arm, and I got stabbed right through my forearm because as soon as I
Wow.
went back, the person went like that,
Yeah.
baked a punch at me, and as soon as I went back like that to bob and weave, he stuck a knife straight through my forearm. And
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
when it hit home to me see, I learned something in the army, which was what you train first and what you do the most, you do first. It doesn't matter. Like your sport, people will say, "Oh, but I can also hit the throat. I can also do this," but you won't do it. And the reason you won't do it is because under pressure and stress, you do exactly what you're done to repeat. So when I was in army jail,
Yeah.
when I got involved when I was attacked, I did exactly what I was trained to do in judo competitions. Afterwards, I would think, well, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? Why?
Yeah.
Why
Mhm.
when the guy had the knife, did I stick my arm up and cover?
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
even though I knew, and
Uh-huh.
my judo and boxing trainers had told me, "Oh no, but you can think and adapt yourself, and if this happens, you won't stick through." Wasn't my experience, and I saw other people
Mhm.
who'd done judo, karate, boxing, and that without fail, the whole time they always defaulted to the rules. None of them hit a person in the throat, even though the other person was stabbing at them in the throat. None of
Right.
them could escape.
Mhm.
Not a single person could escape their rule-bound system
Right.
when
Right.
they were in the
That makes
midst of
sense.
Mhm.
sudden assault and violence. And it's simply you train many repetitions so that you do without thinking. So
Yeah. Right.
Mm-hmm.
they're so bound in the rules. I was so bound in the rules of that system, I didn't even know that I was bound in those rules. So,
Right.
for example, the other person would grab at me, and instantly, because of my judo training, I'd grab back. And as I grabbed back,
Ah.
the other person would, suddenly have a knife stuck against my throat. And you're like, oh, my actual judo conditioning. If that person had have been trying to kill me, I'd be dead.
Wow, that was incredible information. Like, and what a life.
Yeah.
Right. Amazing.
That's just the first part.
That's just the just the biography.
Yeah, that's just this biography. We didn't even get to the questions yet.
No.
So you guys are in for a treat, and that's a little preview of what's to come.
Yeah. So the next section will be some of the questions that we had for him, and then the last part will be the rest of the questions that we asked. Yeah. So I guess that's what we have for today. So we appreciate you listening to this podcast episode. I'm Stephanie Dunham.
I'm Evelyn Mason.
I'm Rochelle Knapp. Please follow, like, and subscribe.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, we look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks and have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks so much for joining us as we discussed such an important topic. We hope you got some food for thought and encouragement to keep going and keep growing. See you later, Bear Club.
Remember to join the Bear Club on our Patreon page for exclusive content. The link is in the description. You can find our podcast on Google, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.